Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. All praise to the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has enabled us to reach another day. It is not within our capabilities or rather our abilities to do whatever we want, but it is the mercy of the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that enables us to navigate through these life challenges. And we therefore obliged to always glorify and praise for that. Thank you very much. That aside, this is the lesson 3 for genetics. And today we will be discussing the chromosome. Very good. Now, today we will be also dealing with something very important. Why is the DNA used as a confirmatory test for the child's parentage? When there is an argument between the father and the mother of the child, such that, for example, that it was through unlawful means, and the mother says that this is the man who did so, and that is why I'm having this outward projection on my stomach, or rather this protruding. Therefore, as a biological student, you need to worry less if you are not the accused of that, if you are not the right person to be accused. Now, today we are going to navigate, delve, and dive into that. But meanwhile, let's look at the structure of the chromosome. Now, the first thing that we need to understand is, when we are discussing this chromosome, where is the chromosome first located? Let's look at the location of the chromosome. Location. The location of the chromosome is in the nucleus. The chromosome is found in the nucleus. It is located in the nucleus. Now, structurally, how does the chromosomes look like? Structure of the chromosome. Structure of the chromosome. Structure of the chromosome. Structure of the chromosome. Structurally, the chromosomes looks like a thread-like. It looks like it is thread-like. It is thread-like. Now, therefore, we say that the chromosome is a thread-like structure found in the nucleus of a cell. In the nucleus of a cell. And therefore, the chromosome is a thread-like structure found in the nucleus of a cell. Now, let's look, this is the structure of a chromosome. Now, let's look at the chromosome, what is composed of. We can see that the chromosome is composed of 2 strands of chromatids. It is composed of 2 strands of chromatids. Composed of composition. 2 strands of chromatids. The chromosome is composed of 2 strands of chromatids. Very good. Now, this is the chromosome. It is made up of 2 strands of chromatids. Now, the 2 strands of chromatids are joined at one point by a structure called centromere. Centromere. Joined at one point by a structure called centromere. Good. Now, these 2 strands of chromatids and these 2 strands of chromatids, at one point, they are joined by a structure called the centromere. In other words, they are attached at the centromere. And this one is one chromosome. What you know is that the chromosomes, they do exist in pairs. What does a pair mean? 2 chromosomes aligned together, lying side by side. And the 2 chromosomes lying side by side is what is called bivalent. When chromosomes lie side by side, they are called bivalent. Another important thing is that we said the chromosomes exist in pairs, right? And chromosomes existing in pairs, that is what we call homologous chromosomes. Homologous chromosomes. homologous chromosomes. And you may have found that the homologous chromosomes are similar in length, appearance, but they do differ in their genetic composition. How? You may find the other homologous chromosome that was with these to form a pair of homologous chromosomes. In length, they look similar. In appearance, they look similar, but they do carry different genetic composition. However, them looking alike in the structure, appearance, also in the length, we do say they possess different genetic composition. Good. Another important thing is we need to understand along the length of these chromosomes, along the length of the chromosomes, there are something called, we have genes. Along the length of the chromosomes are genes. Again, before we continue, I want us to look at what level is this chromosome visible under a powerful microscope. We say this chromosome is only visible or can only be seen under a powerful microscope during the process of cell division. Get that concept right. That these chromosomes are only visible under a powerful microscope during the process of cell division. Good. And we said along the length of the chromosomes, there are genes. And we said the location of a gene in a chromosome in our first lesson are called the gene loci or the gene loci. And therefore, these are gene loci, right? Now, why want us to say that the genes, again, cannot be seen or are not visible at whichever case, whether you use a powerful microscope, they are that much minute structures that cannot be seen under any powerful microscope. Very good. Again, this gene, they contain a protein molecule called the deoxyribonucleic acid. They contain a protein molecule called DNA. A protein molecule called DNA. That is the deoxyribonucleic acid. That is the deoxyribonucleic acid. We said that the gene is made up of, or rather contains protein molecules, that is the DNA, that is the deoxyribonucleic acid. The DNA is made up of, or rather contains, a protein molecule called the DNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid. Now what happens is, because we are studying genetics, and the previous lesson was about variation, what happens is, during the process of cell division, and we know cells do divide. After cell division, the cell grow, expand, elongate. And after expansion, elongation of the cell now gets specialized, or rather differentiated, to perform specific function. And therefore we say such a cell has reached maturity beyond which it cannot further divide or rather grow. Good. Now this DNA, during cell division, at the first phase of meiosis or rather mitosis, what happens is the DNA replicates. We say the DNA replicates. Now replicates simply means the DNA is copied. The same exact information that is contained in this DNA is copied, and another DNA similar to this will be found, or rather a duplicate of this. The process where we find a duplicate of this DNA is called the replication. Now, the process of getting the process of getting an identical DNA similar to this is what we call replication, while the duplication is the outcome, the duplicate, because sometimes replication and duplication are used interchangeably, because the process where this DNA is copied to another DNA similar to it, that is what we call DNA replication, because the DNA has to replicate such that the same genes should be transmitted to the offspring. Another thing is that is very important that you need to understand about the DNA is that the DNA contains some coded information for a specific instruction that dictates a particular characteristic. There is a way that the information in the DNA is coded to such that it dictates a certain characteristics in the organism, in the cell or its progeny, because the DNA has some coded information that dictates, or rather the characteristics of the cell and its progeny. Now, I want us to look at the term progeny. What does the term progeny means? Progeny is the offspring. Is the offspring. Basically, progeny means offspring. Progeny means offspring. Progeny means offspring. And therefore, we said that the DNA, now back to the question that I started with the lesson. How is the DNA a confirmatory test for the child's parentage? How is the DNA? How is the DNA a confirmatory test? A confirmatory test for the child's parentage. Why do the doctors use the knowledge of the DNA to know the real parents of the child? Because we said during the cell division, specifically the meiosis, because that is the one that affects the process of fertilization and the gamete formation, what happens is the DNA in the male gamete and the female gamete is going to replicate. That means the exact DNA in the gamete of the father and that in the gamete of the mother will be copied exactly. Am I communicating? Right? Because the DNA in the male gamete and that of the female gamete will be replicated or rather duplicated. That means the exact DNA in that gamete will be copied and that of the mother will be copied, and now they're going to form the offspring. And therefore, there is a way that now information, that DNA will be coded. And therefore, the doctors use that coded information to now find the parentage of that particular child. Very good. That is how the knowledge of DNA is used in finding the child's parentage. Because you say that the DNA is a coded information which has a set of instructions that dictates a particular characteristics in a cell or its progeny. Good. Or its progeny. And now the concept of DNA being used as a confirmatory test for the child's parentage now relies on the DNA replication, where the DNA from the parent is exactly copied in the offspring now, and that from the female partner and the male partner, their gametes, now there's a way it is going to be coded, and therefore they can be told who is the exact parent of the child. Very good. Another thing is that these chromosomes, they also take part during the cell division. And basically we say have two types of cell division. That is meiosis and mitosis and meiosis. What we know is that in mitosis, the parent cell is a type of cell division where the parent cell divides into two daughter cells, each having the same number of chromosomes as the parent cell. What does that mean? For instance, we have 46, that is 2n. Whereas in meiosis, the type of cell division in which the parent cell divides into 4 daughter cells, each having half the number of chromosomes as the parent cell, that is haploid. Good. And that is, I think, a brief information about the chromosomes. Because the chromosomes, we will be having the genes, we will also be having the DNA, and how they are having information in our next class. But again today, I want to also emphasize a very important concept I wanted to share with my learners, is that sometimes you can be asked that if the supply of sunlight is cut off from the universe, life on Earth wouldn't be existing. How? Because sometimes people may question the nature. Sometimes people, they can't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the supreme and the sole provider of everything. So today I want to navigate how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the sole provider for all the life on earth or existence by using some biological knowledge. Now let's look at just a natural aspect such as the sunlight. The sunlight. The sunlight. Sometimes you may not be clearly able to fathom that the nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created has a lot of significance in our presence on this earth. Now, let's look at the sunlight. What we know is that the sunlight is a very important, the energy from the sunlight is very important in sustaining the life on earth. And therefore, using the sunlight energy, we can can trace back that the sole provider to the life on earth is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and nobody can do that. Let's look at this. How does the sunlight is beneficial to this world? What we know is that the primary producers of food in the ecosystem are the green plants. Now we have the green plants, and some bacteria, e.g. the photosynthetic algae. What these do is that they primarily depend on light energy from the sun to manufacture food substances, right? Because they use the light energy from the sun to manufacture food substances. For instance, the green plants, they have that chlorophyll that traps and is also used in photolysis of water. Or rather, just in simpler terms, you can say they use that energy to combine the carbon dioxide and the water molecules to form simple glucose and oxygen gas. For instance, glucose, let's look at this. Carbon dioxide plus water, we're going to form, carbon dioxide plus water, we're going to form simple glucose plus oxygen gas. On balancing this, we are going to have 6, 6, 6. Right. Now, this is a generalized chemical equation of the process of photosynthesis. You can see that the water was provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, the oxygen will again be supplied to the ecosystem by the same process. Very good. Another thing is that these ones, they provide food. Primarily, they provide food to the herbivores. Herbivores feed on flesh. No, herbivores feed on vegetables. That is food manufactured directly by the plants. Now, from the herbivores, again, we have the carnivores that feed on these herbivores. The carnivores that feed on these herbivores. Again, we can see the process of photosynthesis. Again, supplying oxygen to the environment, or rather the ecosystem. Oxygen supply. Oxygen supply. Oxygen supply. It's supplying oxygen. Again, we can see the sunlight, it brings about warmth. That's even essential for the germination of the seedlings. Very good. Another thing they supply. Very good. These are basically what that they change. Now let's look, suppose there was no sunlight. One day, or for a certain period of time, the supply of sunlight was cut off. That means life on earth will now cease to exist. How? For example, primarily what dies first is the green plant. The green plants will now die because they will not be having the energy to do the process of photosynthesis, or rather manufacture food substances that they use so that they can also grow and blossom, right? Another important aspect is that there will be interruption of the food chain. Food chain interruption. Food chain interruption. How will the food chain be interrupted? From the green plants, when they manufacture food, they provide the food to the herbivores, which feed on the vegetables, right? Now, if the herbivores do not get food from the green plants because they cannot manufacture food since there is absence of sunlight, that means they also start declining. And once the herbivores start declining, that means the carnivores will also be having the same declination because they are directly proportional, because they depend on the herbivores for their survival and existence. Very good. Beyond that, the process of photosynthesis was contributing, or rather supplying, oxygen to the ecosystem or the environment. Since there is no photosynthesis, there will be no oxygen. There will be no what? Oxygen. That means if there is no oxygen in the environment, or rather the ecosystem, that means there will be suffocation. Suffocation. Another important thing is, since there's no sunlight, that means there will be freezing. There will be freezing. Very good. Now, all those things join up. Now, a combination of lack of food by the green plants, food chain interruption, suffocation, and low temperatures. Even the low temperatures, what they do is the enzymes in our bodies will not be effective, because we know the enzymes are organic catalysts that are protein in nature, and therefore they speed up some metabolic reactions in our body. Therefore, that means, in fact, in the process of digestion, there will be no enzyme. That means the enzymes also becomes ineffective. And therefore, at some point, if the supply of sunlight is terminated, the life on earth ceases to exist, or rather stops. How? Which analogy are we applying? Now, from that analogy that we are seeing, the knowledge, again, if there's no oxygen, if there is no warmth, that means even the process of germination where the seeds were developing into a seedling will also be inhibited. That means the gradual change of life on earth now will stop. How can we relate that to the life on earth? We are Muslims, and sometimes we need to understand why we are created. Because in essence of our creation is only to primarily worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes you may think that these tall buildings, this luxurious life you are living, those tall buildings, those big cars you are driving, you think you came up with them. No, you can even relate that those things are just advancement of the provisions of the things that were already provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.